He tried to show off, then America's deadliest seal revealed himself. The bar was alive with the usual chaos, laughter bouncing off the wooden beams, the soft hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the faint rhythm of classic rock spilling from the jukebox. It was Friday night, and the harbor line had reached full capacity. Among the crowd, one man stood out, not because he was different in appearance, but because of the way he carried himself. Jake Thompson was broad-shouldered, confident, and loud, always eager to dominate a room with his presence. He thrived on attention and craved validation. His laugh was the loudest, his stories the most exaggerated, and his smirk the most arrogant. Tonight, he was in his element, retelling a tale of a fight on a downtown street, where he claimed to have taken on 3 men at once. "You gotta show people who's boss," he boasted to his friends, slapping the bar and flexing his biceps for emphasis. "Otherwise, they'll walk all over you." His companions laughed, nodding along, intoxicated by the drama and his confidence. Across the bar, near a corner table illuminated only by a single dim bulb, sat a man who seemed completely unaffected by the chaos around him. His hair was cropped short, his posture calm but alert, his eyes scanning the room like a predator, noting every detail. He wore a simple dark hoodie and jeans, nothing flashy, nothing to draw attention. A glass of water sat untouched before him, condensation sliding slowly down the side. His presence was subtle, almost invisible, yet somehow commanding. Jake's gaze eventually fell upon him. The man's calm indifference immediately irritated Jake. He was used to commanding attention. He was used to being the alpha in any room. And here was someone who didn't flinch, didn't laugh, didn't acknowledge him at all. That simple lack of recognition stung worse than any insult could. Fueled by ego and the need to dominate, Jake strode across the bar with swagger. He planted himself in front of the man's table, folding his arms and leaning slightly forward. "You look bored, man. Don't tell me you didn't hear my story." The man looked up slowly, his eyes calm and calculating. "I heard it," he said evenly. "I just didn't see the point." Jake's expression darkened. "Not impressed? Not impressed with me?" He leaned closer. "You think you could do better?" "I'm not here to do better," the man replied, voice even and measured, like he was speaking to a child rather than a grown man trying to intimidate him. Jake laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You military or something?" The man shrugged. "Something like that," he said casually. That simple acknowledgement was enough to further fuel Jake's ego. He smirked, leaning closer, as if proximity alone would assert his dominance. "Well, here, we prove who's alpha. You want to prove it?" "I don't need to prove anything," the man replied calmly, finishing his sip of water. Jake's eyes narrowed. This was unfamiliar territory for him. He wasn't used to someone refusing to react, to challenge, or to fear him. Frustration boiled over. He reached out and grabbed the front of the man's hoodie, intending to shove him or intimidate him. His friends cheered, egging him on. What happened next was instantaneous, fluid, and devastating in its precision. The man twisted his wrist under Jake's grip, shifted his weight, and used leverage to flip Jake forward. Before Jake could recover, he was forced to the floor, wrist locked painfully, chest pressed lightly against the bar. He had not been crushed, only controlled, restrained, and utterly humiliated. "Let go," the man said calmly. His voice was low, quiet, yet every patron in the room could feel the authority behind it. Jake struggled, but the grip increased subtly, ensuring compliance without escalation. The bar went silent. Patrons froze mid-conversation, eyes wide as the situation unfolded. The loud, arrogant man who had dominated rooms with bluster now found himself completely powerless in the presence of someone who didn't need volume to command authority. Then the door opened. 3 men entered, moving silently, deliberately, their presence unmistakable. They didn't wear uniforms, but every movement spoke of intense training. Eyes scanning exits, hands close to their hips, posture alert but relaxed. Their silent arrival amplified the tension in the room. One of them, the tallest, approached the table and nodded once at the man in the hoodie. "Ready when you are," he said quietly. The man released Jake, who stumbled backward, clutching his wrist and struggling to regain composure. He looked at the newcomers, then back at the man who had just humiliated him. Who are you?" he stammered. "Commander Daniel Hayes," the man replied simply. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some of the patrons recognized the name immediately. Others only knew from the hushed reverence in their friends' voices. Daniel Hayes, the SEAL commander whose missions were classified, whose reputation was legendary, whose authority was absolute. He led the most elite and feared teams in the U.S. military. Jake's jaw dropped, his face flushed with embarrassment, the earlier arrogance replaced with confusion and fear. "You're serious?" he muttered. "Very serious," Hayes nodded once. One of his teammates subtly adjusted his position, signaling readiness. Hayes glanced at Jake and spoke with quiet authority. "You mistook aggression for strength. Real strength is control, the ability to walk away when you could escalate, the ability to lead without proving yourself through violence. That's what true power is." Jake's friends had gone silent, unsure whether to intervene, unsure of how to respond. Hayes's calm, unwavering presence rendered their bravado meaningless. "You grabbed someone you didn't know, thinking it would prove dominance. It didn't. It proved insecurity. Confidence without skill is nothing but a mask." Jake's face burned. Humiliation coursed through him like fire. I didn't know," he said quietly, almost inaudibly. "That's usually the case," Hayes replied, eyes calm but piercing. "Most people overestimate themselves until they encounter someone who actually knows what they're doing." Hayes signaled his team subtly. They moved as a coordinated unit, flanking him without unnecessary attention, creating a visible yet silent barrier. Their presence was enough to communicate that this was not someone to be trifled with. Jake's friends looked on, frozen as the room's energy shifted. The patrons who had been entertained moments ago now watched in awe, recognizing authority without needing to understand the full story. Hayes adjusted his hoodie slightly, looked at Jake one last time and said, "You should consider this a lesson. Leadership is earned through discipline, awareness, and control, not through volume or aggression. Remember that." With that, Hayes and his team left the bar, moving with the precision and quiet authority that defined their profession. The music and chatter slowly resumed, but the atmosphere was forever changed. Conversations were subdued, laughter cautious, and a new understanding of true power lingered in the air. Jake sank into a chair, staring at the floor, replaying every second in his mind. For the first time, he understood that dominance wasn't about strength or intimidation. It was about discipline, self-control, and quiet authority. He had witnessed it firsthand, and the lesson was impossible to ignore. Weeks passed, and Jake returned to the bar on quieter nights. Arguments erupted around him, but he no longer sought to dominate. He intervened calmly, using words, not fists, to diffuse tensions. "It's not worth it," he would say firmly. Patrons noticed the change, some commenting quietly, impressed by the newfound maturity. Meanwhile, Hayes and his team continued their operations far from public view. Missions that saved lives, disrupted threats, and upheld security were carried out in silence. Hayes's leadership was defined not by recognition, but by effectiveness, discipline, and the respect of those who served under him. He understood that true power is invisible to those who lack the experience to recognize it. The bar incident became a private turning point for Jake. From alpha attitude to instant regret, he had learned a profound lesson about strength, humility, and authority. Ego was fragile. Discipline was lasting. He carried that understanding forward, not as a boast, but as a quiet guide to how he conducted himself in everyday life. Months later, the harbor line remained the same in appearance, but had subtly changed in spirit. The regulars spoke of the night haze revealed his presence, though none fully understood the significance. For those who had been there, it became a story of caution, a reminder that arrogance could be humiliated in a single instant by someone trained, disciplined, and silent in their authority. Jake Morgan, once the loudest, most arrogant man in the room, had transformed. His confidence remained, but it was tempered by